Welcome to today's explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a pretty dense certification guide, the CompTIA Security Plus SY0701, to see how it actually lays out a complete blueprint for building an enterprise digital fortress. Whether you're an IT pro trying to level up your skills, or just someone who's super fascinated by how massive organizations protect their most sensitive data, you are absolutely in the right place. We are going to break down this complex cybersecurity architecture into clear, tangible concepts that you can actually use. So let's get into it. Here is our game plan for today. We'll start with the security control foundation, then move into fundamental cyber defense concepts, followed by traps, sensors, and deception. After that, we'll hit safe system change management, and finally, we'll crack open the cryptography inner vault. Okay, part 1. The security control foundation, establishing the rules of the game. Because before you build a fortress, you've got to know the ground rules, right? According to the guide, literally every security mechanism you build anchors back to the CIA triad. This is the absolute bedrock philosophy of protecting digital valuables. Think of it like this. Confidentiality is the lock on the safe. It makes sure only the right people can actually see the data. Integrity is that tamper-evident seal, guaranteeing the data hasn't been maliciously or even accidentally altered. And availability? Well, that's just making sure the safe's door isn't completely jammed when the owner actually needs to grab their stuff. If even one of these three pillars falls, your entire security posture collapses. Now, to defend that triad, the CompTIA framework outlines 4 very distinct categories of controls, removing all the way from high-level management down to physical fences. First, you have technical controls. These are your firewalls and encryption, the digital heavy lifters. Then, managerial controls, the strategic brains of the operation like risk assessments and policies drafted by leadership. Operational controls are all about the day-to-day human element. Think incident response routines or security training. And yes, that means those mandatory, kind of annoying phishing emails from HR, they are actually a vital line of defense. Finally, physical controls are exactly what they sound like, the actual guards, locks, and fences you can touch. All 4 of these have to work in total harmony. All right, moving to part 2. Fundamental cyber defense concepts, securing the borders. Let's talk about the actual structural architecture of a modern network. This brings us to a massive concept, zero trust. Never trust, always verify. Basically, this means operating as if threats are already inside your network. You're checking IDs at every single interior door. That old castle and moat model, where anyone who makes it inside the castle walls is just automatically trusted, is completely dead. In a modern enterprise, you don't just verify someone at the front gate. You verify them when they walk down the hallway, when they try to open a specific door, and again when they try to look in a filing cabinet. So if you've ever wondered why your company makes you authenticate like 3 different times just to check your email, well, this is exactly why. So, how does zero trust actually work in practice? It relies on a super strict separation of duties. You have a control plane acting as the intelligence engine, deciding who gets in. And that is totally separated from the data plane, where the data actually moves. The policy engine and policy administrator sit way up high in the control plane, using threat intel and company rules to make access decisions. Then, down in the data plane, the policy enforcement point acts as this vigilant gatekeeper, just executing those decisions. By totally separating the brains from the brawn, enterprises massively reduce their attack surface. Which leads us to part 3, traps, sensors, and deception, defending the perimeter. When it comes to physical security, you never rely on just one type of sensor. You layer them. Infrared spots the heat of a human body in the dark. Pressure sensors detect the physical weight of footsteps on a floor. Microwave sensors look for frequency changes across really wide, diverse environments. And my personal favorite, ultrasonic sensors. They use sound waves to literally see around corners in concealed areas. They are basically mimicking bat echolocation to catch intruders. Put them all together and you've got a 360-degree sensory net that's practically impossible to sneak through. But what if an attacker actually breaches those physical walls? That's when we deploy deception technology. We're talking honeypots and honeyfiles. It's brilliant because it turns your vulnerabilities into a strategic advantage. Instead of just blocking an attacker, you lure them right into a fake controlled environment. A honeypot looks exactly like a vulnerable server, or a honeyfile. Imagine just naming a dummy file passwords.dsx and leaving it right on a desktop. It's a digital mousetrap. When the attacker takes the bait, silent alarms go off. Your security team just sits back and watches the attacker's tactics in real time, all while zero actual company data is at risk. So, here's a $1 million question for any security architect. What happens when your digital fortress actually needs an upgrade? Because systems are always evolving, and honestly, change is the #1 cause of new vulnerabilities. That brings us to part 4, safe system change management, upgrading the fortress. Listen, you can't just unplug a server on a random Tuesday or push a massive software update without a bulletproof plan. Every single modification goes through a strict approval process. You also have to have a backup plan ready to safely undo changes if you accidentally introduce a bug. The Change Advisory Board, or CAB, which, let's be honest, sounds like a lot of bureaucratic red tape, is actually crucial. It ensures business goals actually align with security realities. And that backup plan? It is an absolute lifeline. If a new patch completely crashes the defense systems, that backup plan is your instant rollback to a safe state. Managing software changes also means making hard choices about access rules. Take allow lists versus deny lists. An allow list is incredibly secure. If an application isn't explicitly on the list, it cannot run, period. It completely neutralizes unknown malware. But operationally, it can be an absolute nightmare to maintain. A deny list, on the other hand, only blocks specifically named bad applications. It's way easier for everyday users, but if a brand new zero-day threat hits your network, a deny list will literally hold the front door open for it. Finally, we've reached part 5, the cryptography inner vault, locking down valuable assets. Look, even if the walls fall and the sensors fail, the data itself has to remain completely unreadable to the enemy. This is where we contrast asymmetric and symmetric encryption. Asymmetric encryption is amazing for secure introductions. It uses 2 keys, a public one to lock the box and a super-scarded private one to unlock it. It's highly secure, but man, it is slow and computationally heavy. That's why we use it just to safely hand off a single shared key. Once that shared key is safely exchanged, systems instantly switch to symmetric encryption, like AES-256. Symmetric uses one shared key and acts as the high-speed workhorse, encrypting literal mountains of data at blazing speeds. So, how do these keys work together in the real world? Think about the TLS protocol, that sequential process happening every single time you see that little padlock icon in your web browser. First, the handshake securely authenticates the server and uses that heavy asymmetric encryption to safely swap symmetric keys. Second, the high-speed symmetric encryption takes over to lock down the data. Third, the unreadable ciphertext is transmitted safely across the public, untrusted internet. And finally, the recipient uses that shared key to unlock it. It's a flawless, split-second tag team of cryptographic power. And inside this whole public key infrastructure ecosystem, we rely on 3 more fascinating tools. First up, digital signatures. They guarantee non-repudiation. That's a fancy way of saying attackers can never deny their digital footprints because a signature proves exactly who sent a file. Second, key escrow. This is basically giving a spare master key to a highly trusted third party, just in case your primary keys get lost or corrupted. And finally, hashing. Hashing creates a unique digital fingerprint for files. If a hacker changes even a single comma in a massive document, the hash changes entirely, setting off alarm bells that the integrity of the data is compromised. Well, there you have it. The guide lays the tools right out on the table for us. We've explored the foundational controls, the strict zero-trust philosophy, multi-layered echolocating sensors, rigorous system change management, and the deep, complex vaults of cryptography. You now have the high-level blueprint to understand exactly how an enterprise digital fortress is built. But remember, a fortress is only ever as strong as the architect overseeing it. The threat landscape changes every single day. So the only question left is, are you ready to stay one step ahead of tomorrow's unknown threats?